The air in the Meuse-Argonne forest was thick. It was cold with the damp chill of October 1918. Rain had turned the ground to thick, unforgiving mud that pulled at every step. The sounds of battle echoed through the shattered trees. Machine guns chattered in the distance. Artillery shells screamed overhead. Amidst this chaos, one American soldier found himself trapped. He was cut off from his unit, surrounded by enemy soldiers. His name was Alvin York, a corporal who would soon be a sergeant and a legend. He held his rifle. Then it was empty. The fight was far from over. York saw German soldiers charging his position. They came through smoke and mist, bayonets fixed and glinting. No time to reload. He dropped his rifle in the mud. He reached for his sidearm. His hand closed on the checkered grip. It was a Colt model 1911. Heavy, reliable steel and wood. He raised it, sights lined up on the first charging man. The pistol felt like an extension of his will, built for moments like this, for close, brutal work when everything else failed. Outnumbered, not out of options. He squeezed the trigger. The .45 roared, bucking in his hand. The first German fell. York re-aimed. Another shot, another soldier down. He moved with calm, precise motions. A hunter from Tennessee. This was another hunt. Each trigger pull deliberate. Each shot found its mark. The big .45 slugs hit with force, stopping the charge. One by one they fell. The last man fled. Alvin York had stood his ground. He faced impossible odds with courage and his government issue 1911. That act became a symbol, a testament to the soldier and to his weapon. The story of Sergeant York and his 1911 spread through the ranks and back home. It cemented the pistol's reputation as powerful and dependable, a gun that worked in the filth and mud of the trenches, a gun that could stop an enemy with one well-placed shot. The 1911 became more than hardware. It became a hero's gun. It became an icon. And its journey was only beginning, a century-long reach across the world. The story of the 1911 pistol does not begin in the trenches of France. It starts years earlier, in the mind of a quiet genius. His name was John Moses Browning. He was born in Utah in 1855, the son of a gunsmith. From a young age, Browning showed a remarkable talent for understanding machines. He saw how levers, springs, and steel could work together in perfect harmony. He didn't just fix guns, he imagined new ones. He held over 128 patents for firearms. His designs ranged from simple single-shot rifles to complex machine guns that would change the face of modern warfare. He was a visionary, a man who could see the future of firearms. Browning saw a need for a new kind of pistol. The U.S. military was fighting in the Philippines at the turn of the 20th century. Soldiers reported that their standard .38 caliber revolvers were not powerful enough. They needed a sidearm that could reliably stop a determined charging enemy. The military announced a series of trials to find a new, more powerful, semi-automatic pistol. This was the challenge that Browning set out to solve. He wanted to create a pistol that was simple, rugged, and utterly reliable. It had to be powerful enough for the battlefield, and it had to be safe enough for the average soldier to carry and use under extreme stress. His design was a masterpiece of mechanical simplicity. He used the power of the fired cartridge to operate the gun's action, a system called short recoil operation. This made the pistol robust and capable of handling a powerful round. He designed a new cartridge for it, the .45 automatic Colt pistol, or .45 ACP. It was a big, heavy bullet designed for one purpose: stopping power. The pistol itself had multiple safety features. A grip safety meant it could only fire when held properly. A manual thumb safety gave the soldier an extra layer of control. Everything about the design was practical. It was built for a world of mud, dust, and danger. This essay will tell the full story of that pistol. We will follow it from John Browning's workshop to the brutal trials that proved its worth. We will see it serve in the hands of soldiers like Alvin York in the Great War and in countless other conflicts across the globe. We will explore how it became a favorite of law enforcement officers, competitive shooters, and everyday citizens. We will look at its impact on our culture, from classic Hollywood films to modern video games. This is the history of the Model 1911. It is a story of engineering, of conflict, of culture, and of why, more than a century after its birth, this timeless design still endures. The dawn of the 20th century was a time of great change for the United States. The nation was expanding its influence across the globe. Its military was engaged in conflicts far from home. One such conflict was the Philippine-American War. Jungle, close-quarters combat exposed a critical weakness in U.S. equipment. Soldiers were armed with the Colt M1892, a double-action revolver in .38 long Colt. It was modern for its time, but it had a fatal flaw. The small .38 bullet often failed to stop determined Moro fighters. Moro warriors sometimes fought on after multiple hits. That was a terrifying reality for American troops. Frontline reports were grim and consistent. Soldiers described emptying revolvers into charging enemies and being overrun. The psychological impact was immense. A soldier's sidearm is his last line of defense. If it can't be trusted, confidence shatters. The U.S. Army Ordnance Department took the reports seriously. They realized moving to smaller, newer calibers had been a mistake. In close combat, stopping power was the difference between life and death. The military needed a new pistol and a more powerful cartridge. They needed a man-stopper. The Army convened a board of 2 officers, Colonel John T. Thompson, Major Louis Anatole Lagarde. Their task: determine the most effective caliber for a service sidearm. In 1904, they ran gruesome but necessary tests at Chicago's Union stockyards. They fired various cartridges into live cattle. They also tested on human cadavers to study terminal effects. Their conclusion was unambiguous: adopt a pistol with a caliber of not less than .45. That recommendation set the stage for a major firearm trial. The search for a new service pistol had begun. The call went out to the world's leading firearms makers. The military wanted a self-loading, or semi-automatic, pistol. It was new tech. Many designs were complex and unreliable. The Army's requirements were demanding. The pistol had to be simple to operate, easy to maintain in the field, absolutely dependable under the worst conditions. It also had to fire the powerful .45 cartridge the board recommended. Many would try. But one designer from Utah was already building the perfect solution. His name was John Moses Browning. John Browning had already been thinking about semi-automatic pistols for years. He was a prolific inventor, a true prodigy of firearms design who seemed to pluck fully formed ideas from thin air. He had licensed several successful pistol designs to Colt's patent firearms manufacturing company. When the Army announced its need for a .45 caliber pistol, Browning was ready. He took one of his existing designs, a .38 caliber pistol known as the Model 1905, and began to scale it up. This was not a simple task. The pressures and forces generated by the bigger .45 ACP cartridge were immense. The pistol had to be stronger, more robust, and engineered to absorb the powerful recoil. Browning's genius was in creating designs that were both elegant and brutally effective. He understood that a military weapon must be simple. A soldier in the heat of battle has no time for complicated controls or delicate mechanisms. Browning's design, developed with Colt, was a marvel of practicality. It operated on a short recoil principle. Barrel and slide lock together briefly after firing before unlocking. This system was strong and reliable, ideal for the .45 round. He also incorporated 2 key safety features: grip safety, manual thumb safety. The pistol's ergonomics were another brilliant feature. Browning understood how a gun should feel in the hand. The grip angle was set at 18 degrees for natural pointing, almost as if pointing a finger. Controls like the slide stop, magazine release were placed so the thumb could reach without shifting grip. It was a design born from a deep understanding of the human element. The gun became an extension of the user, balanced, solid, dependable. By 1906, Browning and Colt submitted their prototype. It was big, heavy, imposing, a departure from smaller European pistols. It looked the part of a military weapon. It was submitted alongside other manufacturers' entries: Savage, Luger, Webley. Each company thought they had the winner. But Browning's understated simplicity and ruggedness set it apart. Now the U.S. Army would run grueling tests to see which design could endure modern warfare. The U.S. Army pistol trials began in 1907. They were designed to be the ultimate test of a firearm's reliability. The military had learned its lessons from past failures and would not accept a pistol that failed a soldier. The initial tests quickly thinned the herd of competitors. Pistols were subjected to endurance tests, accuracy tests, mud and dust tests. Many designs quickly jammed or broke. One by one they fell away until only two contenders remained: Savage Arms Company, Colt, John Browning's design. The final trial was scheduled for March 1911. It was an unprecedented endurance test. Each pistol had to fire 6,000 rounds. After every 100 rounds, they cooled for 5 minutes. After every 1,000 rounds, they were cleaned and oiled. The Colt, supervised by John Browning, performed flawlessly, 6,000 rounds with no malfunctions. The Savage suffered over 30 malfunctions and several parts breakages. After the endurance run, examiners subjected the still-warm Colt to further abuse. Dunked in water, submerged in acid, rolled in sand, rolled in mud. Examiners shook the mud from the Colt, worked the slide a few times, and continued firing. The Browning pistol kept working, firing through mud, sand, and water. The trial board was astounded. They had thrown everything they could at it, and it had refused to quit. The committee unanimously recommended adoption. Browning's simple, rugged, reliable sidearm had become a legend. On March 29, 1911, the United States Army officially adopted the Colt semi-automatic pistol as its standard-issue sidearm. It was designated the Model of 1911, or M1911 for short. This was a landmark moment in military history. The adoption marked the culmination of years of testing and development and the beginning of an era. The U.S. military finally had a sidearm that met its demanding requirements for power, reliability, simplicity. The initial contract was awarded to Colts, which immediately began tooling up for mass production. The first production M1911 pistols began rolling off the Colt assembly line in late 1911, early 1912. These early models are now highly prized by collectors. They featured a beautiful deep carbona blue finish, checkered walnut grips, fine craftsmanship of a bygone era. Every part was milled from solid steel forgings, fitted by hand. The roll marks on the slide proudly read, Model of 1911, U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, Marine Corps. These branches soon followed the Army's lead, officially adopting the M1911 in 1913. The pistol was now the standard sidearm for all major branches of the U.S. Armed Forces. Training began in earnest. Soldiers and sailors who were accustomed to revolvers had to learn a new manual of arms. They learned to operate the slide, manage the safeties, perform quick magazine changes. The pistol's straightforward design made it relatively easy to learn. As production ramped up, the government realized that Colt alone could not meet the massive demand. To ensure an adequate supply, the government established a second source of production at its own Springfield Armory. Springfield Armory began producing M1911 pistols in 1914. These pistols were identical, ensuring complete interchangeability of parts. The M1911 was ready for service, and its first great test was fast approaching. In April 1917, the United States entered World War I. Millions of American men were mobilized. They brought with them their new standard-issue pistol, the M1911. This would be the gun's first major trial by fire, in the brutal, chaotic reality of trench warfare. The conditions were horrific. Soldiers lived and fought in a nightmarish landscape of mud, rain, and constant artillery bombardment. It was an environment notoriously hard on machinery. The M1911, however, proved its worth almost immediately. John Browning's design was built for exactly this kind of abuse. Its loose tolerances were a godsend in the trenches. The gun could be covered in mud and grime and still function reliably. soldiers learned they could trust their M1911s to work when needed most. This built a powerful bond between man and weapon. Trench warfare also highlighted the M1911's greatest strength: its stopping power. Combat was often close and personal. Trench raids were common. In desperate hand-to-hand struggles, a powerful sidearm was essential. The big .45 caliber slug from the M1911 was devastating at close range. Unlike smaller calibers used by other armies, the .45 ACP could stop an enemy in his tracks, even an adrenaline-fueled one. Demand for the M1911 was enormous. Colt, Springfield Armory could not keep up. The U.S. government contracted other companies to produce the pistol, including Remington UMC. The pistol was primarily issued to officers, non-commissioned officers, machine gun crews, and tank crews. For those who carried it, the M1911 became a cherished possession, a comforting presence in the dark, a reliable friend in the face of horror. The Great War forged the M1911 in the crucible of combat, turning a promising design into a proven battle weapon. The stories that came back from the front lines were a powerful testament to the M1911's effectiveness. Soldiers wrote letters home, and their accounts often mentioned the pistol. They called it the .45, the Colt, my automatic. One young lieutenant wrote to his father about being caught in a German trench raid. His rifle was lost in the chaos, and he fought them off with his pistol. He described the gun's roar as the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. The story of Sergeant Alvin York was, of course, the most famous. His single-handed capture of 132 German soldiers became front-page news. The part of the story that captured the public's imagination was his use of the M1911 to stop a bayonet charge at close range. He was a simple man, and his calm, deadly efficiency with the pistol made him a national hero. The M1911 became inextricably linked with his legend. It was seen as the gun that allowed an ordinary man to do extraordinary things. The pistol was not just a tool, it was a hero's weapon. The German soldiers who faced the M1911 also developed a healthy respect for it. They called it the American Fist. Their standard-issue pistol, the Luger P08, its 9mm cartridge lacked the sheer stopping power of the American .45 ACP. German soldiers learned to be wary. This psychological advantage was a significant benefit on the battlefield. When the war ended, the American Expeditionary Forces returned home as heroes. The M1911 came with them. The gun was now a veteran. The Army Ordnance Department began to collect feedback from the field. The consensus was overwhelmingly positive. However, some minor ergonomic changes were suggested. Many soldiers found that the flat mainspring housing did not fit their hand comfortably. A new arched mainspring housing was designed. Another common issue was hammer bite. To fix this, the grip safety tang was extended, and the hammer spur was shortened. Small scalloped cuts, known as relief cuts, were machined into the frame. The trigger itself was also shortened. Finally, the sights were improved. The front sight blade was made wider, and the rear sight notch was opened up. These small changes made the pistol more comfortable and safer to shoot, especially for soldiers with larger hands or a high grip. These collective changes were officially adopted in 1926. The updated pistol was given a new designation, the M1911A1. Side-by-side comparison shows subtle ergonomic differences but the same overall look. On the surface, it looked almost identical to its predecessor. The core genius of Browning's design remained completely untouched. The M1911A1 was not a new gun, it was an evolution. It was the same trusted friend from the trenches, just with a few rough edges smoothed away. This updated model would become the definitive version of the pistol, the one that would arm a new generation of American service members as they prepared to face an even greater global conflict. As the 1930s came to a close, the world once again stood on the brink of war. The nation began a massive mobilization effort, transforming its peacetime economy into the arsenal of democracy. This meant producing staggering quantities of ships, planes, tanks, and guns. The demand for the M1911A1 pistol skyrocketed. The U.S. military would grow from a few 100,000 to over 16 million service members. Every officer, pilot, tanker, and paratrooper would need a sidearm. Colt could not possibly meet this demand alone. The U.S. government turned to a host of other companies. Contracts were awarded to Remington Rand, typewriters, Ithaca Gun Company, shotguns, Union Switch and Signal, railroad signaling equipment. Each company had to be provided with the official blueprints and gauges to ensure that every pistol was built to the exact same military specifications. The manufacturing process itself had to change. The early M1911s were made with a high degree of hand fitting and a beautiful deep blued finish. This was too slow and expensive. The goal was no longer artistry, it was volume. Finishes were simplified to a durable, non-reflective Parkerized finish. Some smaller parts were now made from stamped metal. The focus was on function over form. These wartime guns might not have had the polished beauty of their pre-war cousins, but they were every bit as reliable and deadly. Between 1941 and 1945, American factories produced nearly 2 million M1911A1 pistols. It was an incredible feat of industrial might. These guns were shipped to every theater of the war: deserts of North Africa, jungles, Pacific Islands. The M1911A1 was everywhere. It hung on the hip of generals and it was tucked into the belts of privates. It became a universal symbol of the American GI. The gun that had been born in a quiet workshop was now being mass-produced on a scale its creator could have never imagined. World War II was a conflict of unprecedented scale and diversity, fought across every imaginable terrain. The M1911A1 served in all of them. It was there on the beaches of Normandy, carried by officers leading their men through the deadly German machine gun fire. It was there in the frozen forests of the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge, a reliable companion in the brutal cold. Paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne Division, 101st Airborne Division, jumped into occupied France with the heavy pistol strapped to their gear, a last-ditch weapon for the chaotic fighting that would follow their landing. In the Pacific, the war was a different kind of fight. It was a brutal island-hopping campaign fought in dense, humid jungles and volcanic ash. Here, the M1911A1 truly shined. The close-quarters nature of jungle warfare meant that engagements often happened at point-blank range. The stopping power of the .45 ACP cartridge was a crucial advantage against the fanatical charges of Japanese soldiers. Countless stories of heroism from World War II involve the M1911A1. Medal of Honor recipient John Basilone famously used his pistol to fight his way back to his machine gun position. Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier of the war, relied on his M1911A1 in numerous close-quarters battles. For pilots, air crews, the pistol was a survival tool. If their plane went down behind enemy lines, the .45 was their only means of defense until they could be rescued. When the war ended in 1945, the M1911A1 had cemented its place in American history. The gun had become more than just a piece of government property. It was a veteran, just like the men who carried it. Millions of GIs returned home with a deep respect and affection for the heavy .45 automatic. The M1911A1 had helped win the war, and in doing so, it had become a permanent part of the American identity, a symbol of the generation that saved the world. The end of World War II did not bring lasting peace. It was quickly replaced by the tense standoff of the Cold War. The United States military remained on high alert, and the M1911A1 stayed the standard issue sidearm. The next major test came in the summer of 1950 when North Korea invaded South Korea. American troops, many WW II veterans, were sent into combat, bringing their trusted M1911A1s. The Korean War was brutal, rugged mountains and extreme temperatures. In bitter Korean winters, weapon reliability was paramount. The M1911A1, with loose tolerances and a simple design, kept working when other weapons might freeze. Soldiers and Marines found comfort in the familiar weight and dependable action of the .45. The pistol's reputation was reaffirmed at places like the Chosin Reservoir, where Marines fought a heroic withdrawal against overwhelming Chinese forces. In that desperate battle, every bullet counted, and the big 45 slugs did their job. After Korea ended, the M1911A1 remained the undisputed king of American sidearms. It had served through 3 major conflicts. The design was nearly half a century old. Still, there was no serious talk of replacing it. Why would there be? The pistol worked. It was powerful, it was reliable, and the troops trusted it. As the Cold War deepened and conflict brewed in Southeast Asia, the venerable M1911A1 would serve another generation. The war in Vietnam was unlike any conflict the United States had fought before. It was a war without clear front lines, fought in dense jungles, rice paddies, teeming cities. For the American GIs sent to fight there, the M1911A1 was once again a familiar presence. The pistol, now over 50 years old, was issued to a new generation of soldiers facing a new kind of enemy. Hot conditions, humid conditions, muddy conditions were a brutal test for any firearm, but the old 45 performed just as reliably as it had in the jungles of the Pacific a generation earlier. One of the most harrowing roles in Vietnam was that of the tunnel rat. These were brave, often small-statured soldiers tasked with clearing the vast underground tunnel complexes built by the Viet Cong. It was terrifying, claustrophobic work. Armed with little more than a flashlight and a pistol, they would crawl into the darkness to face a hidden enemy. For this specialized job, the M1911A1 was the weapon of choice. Its compact size made it maneuverable. Its powerful 45 ACP round was ideal for sudden, close-range encounters. The stopping power of the 45 was a massive confidence booster. In the pitch black, a soldier might only get one chance to fire. He needed to be absolutely certain that his one shot would be decisive. The M1911A1 offered that certainty. Its reputation was so great that many soldiers would go to great lengths to trade for or otherwise acquire a 45. For many troops, especially those in elite units, special forces, Navy SEALs, the M1911A1 was the only sidearm they would consider carrying into the jungle. However, the Vietnam War also marked the beginning of the end for the M1911A1 service life. The military was changing. NATO standardization was becoming a priority. The 9mm cartridge was becoming the new global standard. Single-action design, low magazine capacity were seen as outdated by some military planners. They wanted a pistol with a larger magazine and a double-action trigger mechanism. While the old 45 served with distinction, the writing was on the wall. The search for a new service pistol would begin in earnest after the war, setting the stage for the M1911A1's eventual retirement. By the late 1970s, the U.S. military was actively searching for a replacement for the M1911A1. The primary driver was NATO standardization. Most allies had adopted the 9mm Parabellum cartridge. The United States was the odd man out. A common caliber would simplify logistics. The military also desired a pistol with a higher magazine capacity and a double-action trigger. A series of trials was held to select a new 9mm pistol. Major firearms manufacturers submitted designs. It was a hard-fought competition. In 1985, after years of testing and political debate, the U.S. military adopted the Beretta 92 FS. It was designated the M9. The decision was controversial. Many soldiers, Marines, and firearms enthusiasts mourned the passing of the 45. They argued the 9mm lacked the stopping power of the M1911A1. But the old warhorse refused to disappear completely. Certain elite units were not happy with the M9. They had decades of experience with the M1911A1 and trusted it implicitly. Special Operations Forces, Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance, Army's Delta Force were granted permission to continue using the M1911A1. They valued its trigger, its ergonomics, and its proven stopping power. These elite units did not just keep their old pistols, they improved them. Armorers began customizing the M1911A1s with modern features. These highly tuned pistols, often called the MEU SOC pistol, were finely crafted fighting weapons. This continued use by America's most elite warriors kept the 1911's legacy alive. It was a powerful statement. Even with the latest technology, the best of the best still chose the century-old design of John Browning when their lives were on the line. While the 1911A1 was serving in conflicts around the globe, it was also evolving in the civilian world. After World War II, Colt began to see a market for different sizes of the famous pistol. The original 5-inch barrel model, known as the government model, was quite large and heavy for concealed carry. In response to this demand, Colt introduced the Colt Commander. Introduced in 1950, the Commander featured a shorter barrel and slide. To save weight, it was also the first production 1911 to feature an aluminum alloy frame. In the 1970s, the trend toward even smaller pistols continued. This led to the creation of the Colt Officer's ACP. This model was even more compact. It featured an even shorter 3.5-inch barrel and a shortened grip frame. This made it very easy to conceal. These three basic sizes became the standard for the 1911 platform. Nearly every manufacturer who has ever produced a 1911 has offered pistols in these three configurations. This created a huge amount of choice for consumers. Whether a person wanted a full-sized gun for competition, a mid-sized one for home defense and carry, or a tiny one for deep concealment, there was a 1911 to fit their needs. This adaptability is one of the key reasons the design has thrived in the civilian market. As the 1911's military service wound down, a new chapter in its life was just beginning. The pistol found a new home in the world of competitive shooting. In the 1950s, a new sport called combat shooting was emerging. This demand gave rise to the custom gunsmith. Craftsmen began modifying the 1911 for competition. Armand Swenson, Richard Heine, Bill Wilson. They transformed factory pistols into precision machines. Install high-visibility sights, tune triggers to a crisp, clean break, tighten slide to frame fit, checkered the frames, added extended safeties, added slide releases. Manufacturers began incorporating these innovations into factory guns. Beaver-tail grip safeties, skeletonized hammers, Novak-style sights became more common. Semi-custom and full custom makers rose up. Wilson Combat, Ed Brown, Les Baer. Hand-fitting to tight tolerances. High-performance firearms for discerning customers. Today, the vibrant custom market keeps the 1911 adapting for a new century of shooters. Long after the battlefields fell silent, the 1911 found a new life. It founded on the silver screen. Hollywood loves a hero, and heroes need iconic tools. The 1911 pistol was a natural fit. It became a favorite prop for tough guys of all kinds, from hard-boiled detectives to rogue cops, from gangsters to secret agents. Think of the classic film noir movies. The Private Eye would almost always have a 1911. It was the gun of Humphrey Bogart, of Robert Mitchum. It symbolized a certain kind of gritty, world-weary masculinity. This cinematic legacy continued through the decades. In the 1970s, actors like Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson wielded the 1911. In the 1980s and 90s, action heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone often carried the big .45s. The 1911's role in movies and television cemented its place in popular culture. It became linked with heroism, with justice, and with a uniquely American brand of rugged individualism. The gun was no longer just a piece of military hardware. It was a cultural artifact, a symbol recognized around the world. The 1911 pistol is more than just a firearm. It has become a powerful symbol within American culture. For many, it represents a set of deeply held values: strength, reliability, self-reliance. Its long service with the U.S. military is a huge part of this. It was carried by the greatest generation in World War II. This association links the pistol directly to patriotism. Owning a 1911 for some is a way to connect with that legacy of service and sacrifice. It is a product of the early 20th century. It is made of steel and wood. It feels solid, heavy, and mechanical. It represents an era when things were built to last. The phrase two world wars is often spoken with reverence in the 1911 community. It is a shorthand way of saying that the pistol's design has been proven in the most demanding circumstances imaginable. It is a battle-tested one. For these reasons, the 1911 has become a fixture at shooting ranges, in gun safes, and in the holsters of law-abiding citizens. It is a cornerstone of American gun culture. It is a firearm that fathers teach their sons and daughters to shoot. For much of its history, if you wanted a 1911, you bought a Colt. As those patents expired, other companies began to enter the market. Springfield Armory, Inc. began producing high-quality 1911s in the 1970s. The real manufacturing explosion came in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. This launched the era of the 1911 clone. The market flooded with options at every price point. High-end makers like Kimber rose in the 1990s, offering custom features right out of the box. Clones also made the 1911 more accessible. Companies from the Philippines like Rock Island Armory and Turkish manufacturers produced reliable, affordable 1911s. Those guns let budget buyers own a piece of the legend. Today, the number of 1911 manufacturers is staggering. They come in stainless steel, lightweight aluminum, and even exotic titanium. You can buy a model that looks like a WY2 service pistol, or one that looks like it's from a sci-fi movie. The 1911 is no longer one company's property. It's a platform, an open-source design the industry keeps innovating on. One of the most persistent debates revolves around its safety. Critics often point to its single-action trigger and the need to carry it, cocked and locked. They argue a visible cocked hammer is intimidating. In reality, a properly functioning 1911 is an exceptionally safe firearm. John Browning designed it with multiple redundant safety systems. The pistol has a manual thumb safety. It also has a grip safety. Two separate, deliberate actions are required before the pistol can be fired. Another common myth is that the 1911 is unreliable. That idea often comes from experiences with poorly made clones or improperly customized guns. However, a quality, well-maintained 1911 built to spec is one of the most reliable semi-automatic designs ever. Weight and limited magazine capacity are also frequent criticisms. Compared to a modern polymer 9mm, a steel 1911 is heavy and its single-stack magazine holds only 7 or 8 rounds. The identity of the 1911 is inextricably linked to its chambering, the 45 ACP. For defenders of the 1911, the power of the 45 ACP is its single greatest virtue. However, the dominance of the 45 ACP has been challenged for decades. The main rival is the 9mm Parabellum. The 9mm offers less recoil, and a pistol of the same size can hold more rounds. Proponents of the 9mm point to modern bullet technology. Interestingly, the 1911 platform itself has adapted to this debate. Manufacturers now offer 1911 pistols in a huge variety of calibers. The 9mm 1911 has become particularly popular. It combines the classic, beloved ergonomics and trigger with the low recoil and high capacity of the 9mm cartridge. We began our story in the mud of the Meuse-Argonne. We have followed its journey for more than a century. We have seen it tested in the crucible of war. We have watched it evolve. We have seen it become a star on the silver screen, a symbol of American identity. The question remains, why? Why does this 113-year-old design endure? The answer is a perfect storm of 3 key virtues. The first reason is the sheer brilliance of its original design. The second reason is its adaptability. The story of the 1911 is, in the end, a human story, and yet it is not obsolete. Walk into any gun store in America today and you will see a dazzling array of brand new 1911 pistols. It is not just surviving, in many ways, it is thriving. People still choose the 1911 for the same reasons they always have. It is a tool that not only shaped history but continues to be a part of it. It is a design that was born for the trenches, but has found a home in the 21st century. A true American icon, forged in steel, proven by time and destined to endure for generations to come.